Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some new products from Picket Fence Studios. This stamp set is called A Million Little Things, and I'm using just the stamp set and the coordinating dies for today's card. This reminds me very much of, we talked about in a previous video, those more detailed images that make it much easier to know where to put your shading when coloring. And so if you have not seen that video, I will link it at the end. But yeah, this is a really good one to know for guidance to know where to put your shading. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, like I don't want to do the same old thing I always do. So I decided I was going to switch it up and use colored pencils today. In order for me to enjoy using colored pencils, most of the time, it has to be kind of for the drama of it. And in order to achieve that, I'm going to be doing my colored pencils on black cardstock today. Any dark cardstock would work. I would encourage you to kind of play around with different colored cardstocks, but I'm showing you this part, even though I didn't use this part, I'm showing it to you because I think it's really pretty, and I think it's probably something that people don't think a lot of that's a background option, which is stamping in white pigment ink on a darker background. So because this image has all of this beautiful detail that's already in it, when you stamp it in white on a darker background, it gives almost kind of like a ghost-like image. Like, it's just so beautiful. And so my original intention was to kind of stamp one in one corner, one in the other corner, and then put my colored one in between. It ended up being a little bit too busy for me, but I still wanted to include it because I do think that it's a good kind of background technique that is probably overlooked. So anyway, and this is me just finishing up this particular panel. I am going to be doing my stamping for my coloring in the exact same way. So by stamping in that white pigment ink, and in this one I used Hero Arts Unicorn, but I also like Honeybee's Brilliant White pigment ink. But so this is going to be the panel that we color. But in order to know where to color, so I have this no line coloring look that's kind of very bold and very dramatic on a darker background, I have to stamp it in something. And if you wanted to do less coloring, you could heat emboss this in white. Pigment inks are great for heat embossing, and it would fill in all of that stamped area, and then so you would just have less to color. But I wanted more of a bolder kind of no line coloring look, and so you do want to wait until your pigmenting is dry or set it with a heat tool. And then you also want to make sure your colored pencils are sharp. Okay, that's just no matter what kind of drawing you're doing, if you're using colored pencils, you want to make sure that they have a good fine point on them. And there's a bunch of kind of different leaves in here, but I didn't really want to mess around with a lot of different colors. I know that sounds crazy. But so I just went with two that I knew I would like. I did my leaves in blue, and I did my leaves in blue. I mean, I would. I did my flowers in blue, and then I did my leaves in yellowish green. There was some slight color variation to the leaves, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So the first way I'm going to show you how to do this is by going in with, this is not the darkest color I used was black. I did not go in with black because I knew I would lose my lines. So I went in with the next darkest color, which is kind of like this royal blue. And the first thing that I did was I picked a petal that I wanted to work on. I find when doing no line coloring, doing things in sections is much easier for me. And so I went in and I kind of colored all around the center area. And this was kind of a misstep. I should have colored in the stamen first. I should have done them with a little bit of white and then a little bit of yellow to help them pop, because some of these ended up picking up some of the blue and being a little bit green. But that's okay, because at the end we end up doing a different technique to kind of color over them. But in order to make this technique really pop and really have that colored pencil be very dramatic, you need a white colored pencil or a very light version of the color family that you're using. So here I went in and I put in all the details with that darker blue. And then I went in and very lightly, I didn't use a lot of pressure, very lightly went in with my white pencil and filled everything in. if you find that you do not know how to shade your petals or that you need those guidelines, this is a great way to maintain them. So then once the white was down, I went in with my darkest color, which is black, then the darkest blue, so on and so forth, until I got all the way to the end, where I was putting in my highlights with my lightest color. Talking about the sectioning, so because not all of us are super well versed with the shading and where the lines go, the sectioning of things makes it much easier to break it down kind of into bite-sized pieces without everything getting super muddy and not having any idea where the lines go. So in this petal, you can see a portion of it is kind of curved over. I saved that to the end so that I didn't lose it. And this one, because it's curved over, our shadows will be on the bottom and the highlight will be on the top. These particular types of flowers, I'm not sure what exactly they are, but the shading is very striped-y. So that is why all of my shading with my pencils looks like that, very kind of striped, having all of the different kind of colors in it. I like it. I'm a fan. I think it's super pretty. But you could definitely do it with less stripes. Now, if you are a person who is more comfortable, and you don't necessarily need every single shading line, you can do it this way, which is the way that I chose to do the rest of my coloring. I am using a very light hand going in with my white pencil, so I'm not completely covering up the detail lines. I know it's hard to see on camera, but in real life, I can still see them. And then I'm going in with my darkest color, which is the black, paying attention to where all those kind of shadings should be, which in this case, they have the lines drawn in there for you. But if you're doing an image that doesn't have any lines, most of your shadows are going to be at the base where the petal is meeting the center of the flower. And then where you have a petal maybe turned over, you'll have some shading there because that turned over part of the petal is laying on top of the other one. And then, just for some more dimension or whatever, you can add, a few little dark spots here and there, just to kind of mix it up. But then I'm treating it the same way that I treat my Copic markers. So once I'm going in with my darkest and working all the way out to my lightest. And every time I am just slightly overlapping the color before. So when I go in my black, then when I bring in the dark blue, I'm going just slightly over the black to blend those. Then I bring in my medium blue and then slightly overlapping the dark blue to blend those, the bright blue, so on and so forth. So I'm going to show you the coloring in a couple of different, we're going to do this whole flower here. So you'll be able to see that. And everything is the same. Once I committed to putting down the white first, and I realized I wasn't going to completely lose all of my detail lines, and if I did lose some, it wasn't going to bother me because I kind of had a good feel for where to put the shading, then that is the way that I did the rest of the entire image. Now, some of you are going to say, well, why is the white necessary? Colored pencils are opaque. You are correct. But the white gives the rest of the colors kind of a nice bright base to jump off of, which makes the coloring look very bright and dramatic against that darker colored cardstock. Now, you could do this, on any color. You could do this on craft. We could have done this. We could have started with blue because our green leaves still would have worked with a blue background. So you could do it like more, monochromatic. So if you were doing a dark pink, you could see whether or not you could get your leaves. I would probably make them more on the yellow side if I was working on a pink. But you get the idea of it. And so you end up with this beautiful no-line image. Just be aware, so for me, I'm working with Prismacolor pencils, and they are wax. So that means pretty much once I'm done with the coloring, I'm not really going to be able to do too much else to it, as the wax will repel most things that you would put on top of it. Now, I do a little technique with the center, just to tie in the rest of the background. And like I said, we'll talk about that when we get to that. So What has been... Oh, let's talk about the real quick before we move on to story time. So this is actually part of their newest release, and there's an Instagram hop. So I will link that below in case you have Instagram. There is prizes to be won. And then also several people had asked for Picket Fence to release some white pouncers, so that they could kind of, use them for what they wanted for, or maybe rainbow, is a little bit too bold of a statement for you. Not for me. I love a rainbow. But they are releasing with this release white pouncers. So, and they've also released labels, so you could label whether or not they're a dye or an oxide, since it's recommended that you don't really mix those. So yeah, that's that. I will link that below if you'd like to hop along over on Instagram for your chance to win. So we had Mother's Day weekend this past weekend. And so I had told you Friday we got together with Eric's side of the family. Yesterday we got together with my side of the family, and I celebrated then with my own children. So my husband, God bless him, honestly, he really truly tries to make it a day where I don't have to do much of anything. And unfortunately, so I've told you guys in the past, I get up on Saturdays with Jelly Bean. He gets up on Sundays. So we were already set up for that. And so Sunday morning at 4:30, she woke up. Well, our deal is if you're the person getting up with her, you don't have to do the middle of the night stuff. So at 4:30, I got up with her. Don't mind my dogs. I'm sure they're barking at somebody who lives here because they're clearly a menace. But anywho, so I got up with her at 4:30, and so I was up with her, and our deal is 5 a.m. is the switchover. So if she gets up after 5, she's just up. She's up for the day, and you got to ride it out until, she needs a nappy. So I tried to put her back down, and she was not having it. She was awake. And so at probably about 20 after 5, I thought that maybe she was back down. She was kind of laying there talking to herself, and then she was quiet. So I got back into bed, and she was not asleep. So I woke up Eric, and I was like, I'm so sorry, but it's almost 5:30, and she is up, and I think she's up for the day. Let's talk about the card. So now we finished this large flower. Here, I wanted to talk to this about this bud because it is fluted, and so it kind of changes the way that we do the shading just a little bit, because we still need to pay attention to that segmenting. This is one of those ones with no line coloring that you can really lose it quickly and not know where your shading is. So first things first, you could see I went in there with my black, and right away I outlined that edge. And I need to, after putting in the white, I need to outline that edge so I don't lose it, because looking at this from a side view, the fluted part on the inside is going to be very dark. But this particular flower has a petal edge that is turned back toward us. And so I have to be able to maintain that, which is where the highlight is going to be different. So for the majority of the flower, it's going to have the base at where it's meeting its stem, and that's where my shading is going to be, and I'll have a little bit of shading underneath the part that is turned back. But for the part that is turned back, that petal that is flipped over, the shading is actually going to be toward the inside, and the highlight will be on the very edges of the petals as they flip toward us. So this is where we're talking about, again, the petals themselves, when we're coloring individual flowers, are already break it up into segments for us. But something like this, where you're looking at it from a side view, it is a little bit more challenging to color no line. So you have to look at it, see what segments you can pick out, and then just go one at a time, making sure to clearly define your edges and your shadow areas. And then once you have those, you just go through and again do the same way with the white down and then darkest out to the lightest color, maintaining those highlights. The other thing that I did kind of pause the video for, like, cause we're doing the same thing over and over again. So from here, we're gonna, move on to just a little bit of coloring of this bottom flower, just to show you. I'm not gonna show you the coloring of the whole thing. I'm just gonna show you how I broke it into segments. So in order to maintain the shape of the flower, I just picked portions that looked like individual petals and colored them in white until I was happy that looked like the normal shape of a petal. And then here I learned my lesson with the centers of the flowers, and I went in and did the yellow first, and from there I'll be able to add in then my darker shading over the white and color it just like I did everything else. So anyway, back to story time. So Eric ended up having to get up with her at like 5:30 in the morning. And then apparently she just he tried to put her back down. He intermittently fell asleep in the rocker. Well, she intermittently fell asleep in her crib. And he finally got her up. I think she was finally up like around 8. Let's talk about what's going on here. So I just wanted to show you with the leaf portion, I'm doing the exact same thing, and there's a lot of leaves in this particular stamp, and so I'm just trying to get the ones that are on top first. Again, that segmenting each kind of leaf is its own segment. This does go by much faster because most of the leaves don't connect. So the ones that are closer, like here, these ones I'm doing here, they are laying on top of other leaves, but there's like the one just to the left of it. If we're looking at the screen, just to the left, like that one has 3 leaves, but they're not laying on top of each other. So I can do all of those in one swoop. So once you get more comfortable, it does go by much faster. And actually the greenery didn't take me nearly as long as I thought it would. For the larger leaves, I stuck with a black is my darkest color and then worked out to my lightest color. For the smaller leaves, I'm going to show you 2 darks and then we'll do the smaller leaves. For the smaller leaves, instead of starting with black as my darkest color, I started with my darkest green and then I went out to my lightest color, which I switched to yellow. So when I said like there's just a very slight amount of color variation going on, that is what I was referring to. So they're all still very much a yellow green, honestly, because I love a lime with a navy, and so I think that they look pretty together. But so that way there's just a little something. You certainly could mix up the foliage and make them, different. The only thing I would just tell you is the leaves that are similar, just color all of those the same color. So if you do the smaller leaves, maybe like a teal, then do all the smaller leaves a teal, just so that there's some continuity in your design. Okay, so back to Mother's Day celebration. So he really did not get great sleep. And then, so when I got up, they made me waffles, which was very sweet. So we had strawberries and waffles for breakfast. And then they gave me my gifts, which was very nice. Like there wasn't anything that I needed, but I love everything that they got me. So the kids got me a little bracelet. If you're on social media, you've probably seen them before, but it's like a little bracelet with like a tiny little is it a gem? What would we call this? Yeah, I guess so. It's like a tiny little bead kind of thing on it, but when you look at it through the light, there's a picture in there, and so it's a picture of my little peanut butter jelly bean, and so that is super cute. And then Nathan got me this t-shirt that says "Good moms say bad words," which if you know me in real life, that is so accurate, like could not be more accurate. Here, now I'm just cutting it out with this coordinating die, and then I'm going to show you the background that I intended for it, why I didn't like it, too busy. And then I'm going to show you the background that I ended up creating, which was using some gold perfect pearls. And because I am cheap and I am not going to waste paper, I'm literally just get this black piece of cardstock. I'm just going to flip it on over and use the back side of it because that's how I roll. So here I have the colored image laying there. I'm adding a little bit of water to my palette. I'm going to scoop in some gold perfect pearls. Perfect pearls comes in a bunch of different colors. They have the regular perfect pearl color, and then they have a copper and all kinds. So you could go with whatever one. They also have like jewel tones too. Whichever ones you like. This is how I'm going to add some gold to the center of those stamen. And I'm just going to pick it up. This is a number 2 round brush, and I'm going to paint it on. This is not going to be perfect, just to be clear. Because that wax is going to repel the water, it is not going to be perfect, but it'll be enough that there will be a gold highlight on it. And then I'm just going to set that aside to dry. Once the water evaporates, it will leave the pigment behind, and it should be adhered because Perfect Pearls adheres with water. So now I did some flicks of this gold Perfect Pearls on the backgrounds. Too many? Meh, probably, but it's fine. And then I used a slightly larger, this is a number 8 round brush, to just kind of paint in some more puddles just to make it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to heat emboss my sentiment in black, in gold on black, and then cut it out with its coordinating die. So anyway, so I got that, and then Eric got me this super cute little like watercolor print that is our family. It's in a frame, and it says "Together we have it all," and then it's like if you're looking at the people from the back, so it has Molly next to me, or Molly next to Nathan on the left-hand side, and then Eric is holding Caitlin because they didn't have an option for a toddler. It was a baby or a school-age kid. And so Eric is holding Caitlin, and then Emma is next to them. So it's our whole family, and I love it. It was so super thoughtful. So then after that, we went to my parents' house where my mother very smartly was like, hey, we found a good deal at an Italian place. We're just going to order food so that way nobody has to cook. Because I would have cooked for my mom, but the fact that I didn't have to cook dinner at all for anybody was amazing. God, I get so sick of cooking dinner. And then we did gifts for her. We got her, she's really wanted for a long time, family photos. And so because my oldest nephew was actually living in Tennessee, and him and his girlfriend just moved up here. So now all of her grandkids are up here at the same time. So we were like, well, we got to schedule it now. And so that is what we're doing. In August, we're going to go get family portraits done for everyone. And then, yeah, it was just a really good day. We had great weather. My husband did all of the things so that I didn't have to, and I am so very grateful. But I will be paying him back in June on Father's Day. So here, now everything is glued down. I could have popped this up on foam, but honestly, I didn't really think it needed it. And then for the little accents, this is a new mix from them. I think it's lemon and lime. In this release, they did a lot of cocktail shakers, which is so cute, and I will be using it another time. But so I chose to do the green ones, which very much resemble a peridot stone. And so it's hard to see in the photos because it kind of blends into that gold spatter. But in real life, you can see them, and they kind of set everything off very nicely. So I'm just using, aren't you guys proud of me for getting my crystal katana? It does make it easier. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't. And so I just put it all together, and then that's it. That's the whole card. So I hope you learned a little something. I always appreciate your time and you guys hanging out with me. Go over to Instagram, check it out, check out their new release, lots of good stuff, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.